of Black women, in terms of, what do Black women want? And the reason I say that is because over the past recent weeks and months, during the show, one of the things that's popped up quite a bit is the topic around Black women and the Black women having their own space and so forth. So, as part of Black History Month, we're going to look at what Black women want. And then next week, we're going to give the men a chance, ideally what Black men want. But this week is what do Black ladies first, right? So those are the general four topic areas that we're going to be discussing this morning. And we're going to widen the topic areas with that in those aspects of things. So let's jump into the first aspect of things. If you want to take part in the show, the number is 0753 996 8143. I'll give it again, 0753 996 8143. If you want to take part in the show, you're completely welcome. That's the phone and text line, to call and go live or to send in a text in with your points to further expand on what we're discussing. Um, so let's jump in. The first part in our topic here is COVID and the second lockdown. How is this going to affect everyone? How is this affecting everyone? How is it affecting the youngsters? When we first came out of lockdown, one of the things that we queried with COVID is that how was everyone getting on, their mental health, their well-being, and it's still a pertinent issue and topic today. Are people as concerned around COVID now as they were back up in February, March, when you were seeing those extreme media images coming out of Europe and in China, where people were just seen passing out on the ground and so forth, just dropping and dying. And they were saying the death rate was phenomenal and it was like a shock to the system. And then it came to the UK, and one of the things that I'm always weary of is that there's quite a few people out there that have been affected by COVID. So I'm not going to say anything disparaging, because there's some people have lost a lot in some families have lost two or three members of the family due to COVID related matters, so whether we see it as a pandemic or a plandemic, we still have to be respectful, towards those people that have been impacted by COVID. So where do you stand? Where do you and your youngsters stand, with that? It's surprising that even the youngsters as small and young as 3 years old, they can comment to say that they're concerned around COVID and they don't want to get hurt by COVID. So they've picked up all these jargons on the media, and because everything has been COVID, COVID, COVID since the start of the year, really, or since February per se in this country, with Europe, Italy, and Spain first catching the media's eye, and then the UK following suit heavily, and then taking over in a sense, because when those countries were regaining some form of normality, the UK was going through a tremendous piece. So, where are things with that? Are people being impacted financially? We know that the Greater Manchester region was refusing to close down because of the financial support that was in place for their citizens. They didn't feel that it was sufficient or suitable. And as a group of people that they keep targeting as primary, what are we as Black folks doing and putting in place to kind of come out of this? Let me know what your views are with that. I'm not going to go too much into it, but I wanted to discuss it because it's such a pertinent point now. Are you prepared if there's a second lockdown? Because last time there was a lot of panic buying. So have people done what they've needed to do and gotten their supplies and everyone sitting comfortable just in case it goes wrong? Are you someone vulnerable and you need better guidance and support with that? We can do our best to guide you to the right government channels to get that information. But so we just feel it's pertinent that we offer it as a discussion, because it's so called that we're one of the groups that are most impacted on. And with the promise that there's going to be a vaccine now by December, we know that China's rolled out a vaccine, Russia's rolled out a vaccine that they have put into operation. And then the Oxford trials are saying that a vaccine will be ready in, in the next couple of months for the UK. And likewise, the Americans are saying they're vaccine ready. So, is that going to be a blessing or is that going to be a curse? You know, uh, how many people out there, when we listen to the general media, you have two sets of people that call in. Some people that are very apprehensive and very um, weary about a lot of things taking place in the background, and some people that see people that do that as crazy without offering a reason apart from saying the people are crazy. And one of the things I don't like to do with that is that if someone feels it's a pandemic, why say the person is crazy through ridicule as opposed to giving the information that you feel is pertinent or correct to set the record straight to that person? They ridicule. And that reminds me during colonialization and slavery, when the white protagonist used to make fun of our hair texture, so that we ended up hating our own hair texture. So to this day we can see the impact of a lot of people still hate their hair texture right across the African diaspora. So there's still a lot of shame towards our hair texture. So I don't I don't respond well to when someone tries to ridicule someone in relation to those issues, because it just reminds me of that process. So I always respond angrily and in support of the person who is really on the side of just right information, as opposed to ridicule. So if they feel that people are thinking incorrectly in these instances, why and how so, and what proof and evidence is available on both sides, those things should be discussed. But the matter of freedom of speech is being significantly, or can be seen that it's being significantly impacted on, because people are so scared to say what they think, because the retribution from that is ridicule. So like I said, we have to be mindful. On the matter of Ice Cube, not going to spend too long on COVID. Like I said, it's a matter that is always being debated in the media, but we need to keep it as an option on this platform to make sure that things are said appropriately. On the matter of Ice Cube, if we look in this country and we look at the last election between Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn, that election they should have really panned out with Jeremy Corbyn being the out and outright winner. However, there was a crazy twist and Boris Johnson won a landslide, taking Labour seats that Labour's had for decades. Now, the reason behind that was there was a major shift in voting pattern, obviously, by those people in those areas. It wasn't an issue of voter turnout, it was an issue of confidence. Now, the issue of confidence was that when we look at Boris Johnson's policies, they were quite crystal clear and cut. These are what the thought patterns are in terms of Brexit. We're going to leave, and the reason we're going to do this election is because we must have Brexit, because there was a referendum and people voted for it. So as a result of that outcome, to respect the referendum, we're going to follow through with Brexit. We're going to follow through with Brexit. Text message reads, why do we have to take vaccines? I'm going to dissect that question down 746 in the nitty gritty. I'll come back to the political debate in a second. It's not that I don't feel we have to take vaccines. I I don't want to use the term we have to take vaccines, but let's explore the historical usage of vaccines. You know, if we go back into not ancient Africa, we go back a couple hundred years or so into Africa. You know, the vaccination process is something that was taught to the Europeans by other nations. The Africans were vaccinating and so forth, and it was done through if you research, is it I can't remember which disease it was. Oh gosh, I can't remember which disease it was, but they used the cow dung in a certain way that linked into the lymphatic system that actually meant that that population or subgroup could not be impacted by I think it was a smallpox. I can't remember, but one of those things that it couldn't. The vaccination process was how they used the cow dung, a small amount of cow dung, linked in with the lymphatic system. So it was a slit under the armpits, and that was placed in there, and it prevented that virus from taking hold of that subgroup and population. Now, in modern times, the vaccination process has gone through a whole different another guise and change, and is something that we have to look at. Is something that we have to look at in detail. When we look at COVID-19, a lot of people are apprehensive around it because there's so much going on with the information around COVID-19. By default, you cannot you cannot patent or patent, whatever term you want to use, a measure that occurs naturally in nature. You cannot patent or that. It can't take place. So when they say they got patents on certain strains of the coronavirus, that means this was designed and it is synthetic. So when people hear these things, then it makes people back up that you have something out there that by design has been created. Not that COVID-19 is being created. We're not saying that per se, even though many are. It's not for us to say whether that is the case or not. It's for people to do their own due diligence. But when you look at that aspect of things, people are apprehensive. So the vaccination process around that is to find a measure of making the immune system respond to an aggressive body that it may not have had a response to. Oh, that was difficult to get out. So let me say it again. It's to make the immune system respond to something that it may not have in its own way and a response to. So the vaccine is to help the immune system respond to something, a pathogen or a virus that it wouldn't necessarily have an appropriate or speedy enough response to, so that the body can recognize and destroy or get rid of it before it does harm to the body. So in essence, you prevent it from taking place. However, the issue at hand is that if your body's immune response already made you overcome COVID-19, then the issue is that they're saying that that population group may have long-term or just short-term defense against COVID, and it doesn't mean they can't get COVID again. There's not enough research to confirm or dispute that. Now, if that's the case, then the philosophy and the principles on that would then still apply to the vaccine. So a COVID vaccine would actually be a vaccine that would have to be taken annually because of the fact that if your own body's mechanism gives you protection, but they're saying it may not be for long term, then a vaccine would essentially have the same premise. It wouldn't essentially be for long term. So why do we have the vaccine according to general information in the scientific communities to offer some protection against the virus. Does vaccine work for everyone? No. Some people will still have the vaccine and still contract the issue, but it's the percentages that they look at in terms of the reduction of that within the population. Do we have to? Why do we have to? You don't have to. It's a choice. As far as it's been stated so far, the government has not said any vaccine would be mandatory. If they make it mandatory, would you have to? Again, that's a personal decision and choice of yours. Text message reads, because so far no vaccine. So that rhymes, no vaccine for the vaccine, right? We haven't seen any facts in terms of what's taking place. They say the trials are going well, and there was an adverse reaction, which they closed the trials for a while. Again, that wasn't given in detail, but I'm sure the information is out there to see what would go on. A vaccine is always the choice, the method of choice in such a major outbreak. If we look, was being, in essence, being eradicated from the planet in greater parts through vaccination. So it's in the past, it's been a very successful process. Currently, or however, the way that these vaccines are now currently approached and designed, a lot of people have issues with them. You know, especially the ones that are RNA based, that actually mess around with the expression and the functioning of the cells, even if they say it's for a momentary reasoning. So, but again, it's not for me to tell people what to do, you know, because if you're not going to use a vaccine, what do you do to boost your immune system? I would never tell anyone to just sit at home and say, oh, don't. If you're not going to use something that synthetically boosts the immune system, then you'd have to use something that naturally boosts the immune system, so that an appropriate immune response is always garnered in the best way. And that's where research and finding out in terms of your own well-being, and you know how you overcome colds or flus quicker, you know, all those little things over the years growing up. When you had a cold or a flu, you know, you know, when you know what you did to get it, and you know what you should do to get rid of it as quick as possible. You know, all those little things, you know, you have to become your own doctor, your own physician, to ensure that process works out best for you. So Dr. Serge, if you want to take part, if you got any more questions in relation to that, or you want to call in and give your take, the number is 0753-996-8143. I'll give it again, 0753-996-8143. On the other side of things now, when we were talking about the political stuff, I was mentioning about Boris and Jeremy Corbyn, and the fact that Boris won a landslide victory. At the time, you know, a lot of people, a lot of black folks, you know, still went out and voted Labour. And a lot of black folks went out and voted conservative also. The issue with the Labour process was that the Labour policies and process was heavy ridden and convoluted, and it didn't seem even coherent when it came down to the main issue, which was COVID, which was what was it again, Brexit. And when we look at that, we start seeing that if you just constantly vote for the same political parties, what changes? You know, if your vote is going to be for Labour all the time, that means Labour has no due diligence to respect or follow through with processes and policies. And mark that term policies, because I'm going to bring that up back with in regards to the Dominic Samuels and Sasha Johnson debate. So the policies aspect of things is key and crucial, because with policies you have to push for certain key policies with each political party to have the effective change that you're looking for, because these policies would likely become set in the legal and the legislative process. So you garner the outcome that you're after. So you're, in essence, selling your vote. That's what it means. You're selling your vote, and the political party or parties are pandering towards buying your vote. So much so, when we look at countries like Jamaica, people don't sell their votes. People just vote for the political party is associated and affiliated with their parents, which is a stupid process, because if that's the case, it's always going to be this tug of war battle, as opposed to allowing and forcing the political parties to better themselves, better their policies, better their approach to how they deal with you as the common folk, towards making things better for you and your children and your children's children, creating jobs, the processes in creating jobs, the process or creating simple opportunity, whether it's an entrepreneurial opportunity or trade or whatever the case may be. So trade skills. So when we look at things like that, and we now look at America with Ice Cube getting a lot of flack for simply leaning more so to what policy of the two parties that approached him. So both Republicans and Democrats approached him. He said in his interview that the Democrats approached him initially. And when they approached him and his group about what they could do for the Black community, a plan was set in motion and set in place to create some policies. And then he was approached by the Trump campaign group. And what the Trump campaign group did was take the policies and the offer made by the Democratic Party and expanded on it. So there's a $500 billion further investment. The package is quite detailed and comprehensive, far more so from the Republican Party than it is for the Democratic Party. So he's pushed out there what these policies entail and assure, based on the presidential office offering these things in return for that group support, and there's to push the people within that demographic to vote for them. So should the Republicans come into office again for another 4 years, or as the saying goes, should Donald Trump be reelected, then these are the policies that will come into place to, automatic. And ever since the day dot, is one of the things that I've always said to, when we're going into vote, we must have a lobby group where we lobby these government officials, lobby these parliamentarians, lobby these officials to ensure that there's policies and procedures that are in place. Because if there's not policies and procedures in place, then what we're going to do, we're just going to vote for voting's sake. And then we're going to complain when things don't go our way and say, now we're always in a tough position. There are already policies and processes historically that are in place that keeps and maintain us in a tough position. And we have to negotiate our way out of that, because until we get policy and procedural changes, it will remain the same, just like stop and search, from the police. It goes to and fro, because one group will come in and say, well, stop and search is an effective tool. Another group will come in and say, well, stop and search is it's disproportionate and impacts more on the Black community, and so forth and so forth and so forth. So we have to notice these opportunities to know when we take advantage of these opportunities. And with the Trump campaign, everyone knows that I would lean towards more the Republican side, because at the end of the day, and I keep saying this, Joe Biden's been in politics for 47 years. 47 years, and he's done diddly squat for us, even as a vice president under a so-called Black president, and the Black president didn't do diddly squat for us as a group within within the United States. So why would anyone even want to vote for them? Simply because the media says Donald Trump is a racist. I understand that. But Joe Biden is the one that created the disparaging. He was part of the architectural team that created the disparaging process and legislative process that penalizes not only black men but black families, because when the men go to prison, black families are impacted on. And as a result of that, when we look at Kamala Harris, she was responsible for legislative processes that were disparaging towards black mothers. Don't believe me? Go check it out. Because I don't really feel that she thinks she's black. She just says it because, it sounds good. Her favorite rapper is Tupac. Her favorite rapper alive is Tupac, according to her. It just goes to show, it's just a pandering process. There's no true sincerity or honesty within that team. Now, the things that they garner as Donald Trump being a liar are the little simplistic aspect of things, like the crowd that came out for his election. But the point is that when he campaigns and says he's going to do A, B, C, D, that A, B, C, D is pushed for and honored. So as far as I'm concerned, if Ice Cube has got the right notion, the right idea, he's not a Republican and he's not a Democrat. He's a person that's looking for the best outcome, no matter which side wins, for African Americans in America. And that's the key. Whenever an election takes place, we should always be leaning towards what's the best outcome for us, when this group wins. And it's not just because, this MP is black or this MP is this. What policies are in place, or what policies are on offer by that political party, or that we need to maintain, or that we need to grow. Those are the key issues. What do you think? 0753 996 8143. 0753 996 8143. One more time for the money. 0753 996 8143. What's your take? Give us a call. Let us know what you're thinking on that one. So, I disagree with the mass consensus that Ice Cube is a sellout. I think Ice Cube done the right thing in terms of creating that negotiation from taking place. Going to jumping onto that, the policies and procedures. One of the things that was quite curious in watching this debate between Dominique Samuels versus Sasha Johnson, there's so much that has to be unpicked there. So much that has to be unpicked. So much that has to be unpicked. Now, Dominique Samuels is a young 21-year-old, as she coins herself, conservative?
Yeah, black conservative.
Black conservative. Oh. Caller, can you give us a call back? What happened here? If you give us a call back, caller, not sure why the call dropped. So Dominique Samuels is a 21-year-old black conservative. Sasha Johnson, how would you classify Sasha Johnson?
She said that she's a working class.
Mm-hmm.
A working class. I don't know how you classify it. I can't remember. What does she take part in? She's linked with Black Lives Matter marches and so forth, but she's not Black Lives Matter organization.
She's not part of the organization. She just linked with the movement.
Yeah, what it represents.
And what it represents. And so kind of like what we've said in the past as a part of the show, that
whilst we don't support the organization per se, or we don't agree with the organization in structure, the movement in itself is a different process that we need to hijack and be a part of, because it's garnering momentum, and it's taken with high credibility in society. So we need to link in with that and take the best advantage of it to create something positive for all of us within the context of things. So her approach is much the same. Is she the one that stood up with the fist up on those social media? So if you've seen the social media footages of Sasha Johnson, the Black Lives Matter protest up there in Oxford and stuff, she's standing there for a fist up. There's so much to unpick with this. So much to unpick. Now, both young ladies had right and both young ladies had wrong stuff that they said, in my humble opinion. I would love to know if you guys anyone saw it and you have a take on it. I think overall, if it's a debate or a competition, it should have just been a debate, but it turned out to be like a competitive platform. The person that gained the most credibility from it was Sasha Johnson, and the person that was in some ways discredited was Dominique Samuels. Now, young Miss Samuels, like I said, 21-year-old young lady, has come on major platforms such as Sky News and other platforms, being representative of us. But in sitting and listening, and this is one of the things that I say, we have to be mindful of who represents us in the media's eye, because a representative of the people within the media's eye needs to represent the people and not their personal agenda. And this is where I feel that there was a major difference between Dominique and Sasha. We have to, as sitting in the hot seat in the doctor's surgery, I have to be representative of, if I'm creating a balanced chat show, I have to be representative of everyone within our community, be they in a position that I agree with or not. Because we all don't know who's so right and who's so wrong. You don't know. It's only when you get to your destination you realize what pathway was the best one, right? And we all get to a destination where our paths diverge at times and come back together at points. So not everyone can get to that same destination in the same way. And one of the things that I noticed is that once you start to coin yourself with an ist, and you start taking up the mantle of ION or IVE, let me explain it a bit further. If you coin yourself as a socialist, you're pigeonholing yourself in a certain way. If you consider yourself conservative, you're pigeonholing yourself in a certain way, because you become judged or assessed based on the philosophies and the principles in that one dimension. As a person that is just about being the best they can be in life, which we all should be doing. And we're supposed to be setting out things that are quite essentials. There are certain conservative values that I agree with. The family infrastructure is an important infrastructure. And the family, in the sense that it takes both parents, or the input from both parents, to create a balanced and healthy child. So there's certain aspects of conservatism that are very much so profound and correct. But conservatism on a whole
creates that ethos of I'm right and you're wrong mentality, in the sense of you start to become righteous. So if we even use, I apologize if I'm jumping to and fro and using the American examples. If we use the Candice Owens when she attacked Cardi B, and that's not a hard attack to do, you know, she made it out that as a conservative, whereas Cardi B is a liberal or Democrat. As a conservative, she's about family and etc. and etc. And Cardi B's whole approach to femininity is sinful and wrong because and denigrating. Whereas Cardi B views her liberal approach to empowerment. It depends on where you sit on the fence. You know, I don't see empowerment in degrading oneself, but again, I'm not the judge of someone that wants to take that approach, because I'm not the one that's placing the food on that person's dinner table. So we respect both opinions. I would take the position of respecting both opinion, because I'm not here to judge. And when so the however, what you find is that the conservative would take the position of the righteous, and they would view the liberals in that sense as the unrighteous, and the righteous are always the protagonist that starts the war. You know, every time there's a war, right? If you remember, in modern times, how many wars do we know of? We know that let's say, for example, Syria, or even the last Gulf War, where they were saying, well, Saddam Hussein's an evil man, we must get rid of him. This is the righteous, right? And then they went into Iraq and the Middle East, and they killed over 5 million people. The righteous. If Saddam Hussein had been allowed to live out his lifetime, he'd probably be dead now, and probably 100,000 people would have died. I'm sure the other 4.9 million people would have been saying, all right, we can do with that. But the righteous went in, killed over 5 million people, because they saw themselves as righteous, and it's the right thing to do, because their view is the right view. So in my eyes, you know, Syria, again, what's his name? Assad, or whatever his name is, I don't know. Okay. You know, we had Assad down there in Syria, and then you have the righteous, again, the West, saying, you know, going in and wanting to stop him from using his chemical weapons and all these things. Yeah. And again, that's the righteous. And then, you know, Russia not agreeing with it, because they're looking at it from their perspective now, that that's Western intervention and trying to, you know, shape the policies of the Middle East. So they've come in with their people's backing, with a righteous view of protecting the rights of a country to be sovereign. Again, the righteous, everyone going in is going in on the righteous. So the righteous is always the protagonists that start the war. You know, they always are the judges, and they always try to be the executioners, because they're looking at it through righteous eyes. The righteous. And that's the danger with conservatism. And in this discussion between young Dominique and Sasha, you know, she came in with a very righteous view, where she started to go into personal information that she's heard about Sasha Johnson. And a lot of this information have been drafted from right-wing media that are, in essence, that will, because I don't know, that will in essence always try to discredit someone that they see as anti them. So we don't know if the information is factual or spurious, but this is how she came in at Sasha. Now, Sasha being a little bit more
mature. I ain't gonna say old Sasha. You get me? You get me? Sasha being a bit more mature. Um, she was able to, more eloquently, disband with that, because that was inappropriate from the outset, and as a result of that, the debate didn't look good. Nonetheless, what are the key and the major factors that came out of that? One of them being the big flashing red flag for me is that if we have young individuals that are being pushed by the white media groups out there, unchecked, and they're giving their take, we have someone saying in Dominic Samuels that saying she doesn't agree with reparations. Now, she doesn't speak for all black folks. She doesn't agree with reparations. And the way that she sees it, we have created the self-inflict that damages us, because in her own words, she grew up in black areas, right? Mm. So, and it's so wrong in so many ways. And we have to look to say, well, perhaps at 21, you haven't got the worldly experience and the knowledge base, because she learned a few little facts in schools, and from her little research, because she seems like she just goes by facts and not her own thinking at times, how to analytically gain your own conclusion from facts. See, a lot of people get up and they read facts all day. Do you know what I mean? A lot of people get up and they read facts all day, but they're drawing the conclusions based on what the conclusion is that was presented. But as a researcher, you're supposed to be looking at things, putting all the different aspects of the facts together, and drawing your own conclusion to whether you're going to agree with the author or not, because the author might have not taken something into consideration at the time when that work was done. And this is how certain things that were presented as facts 20, 30 years ago become outdated, because there's further thinking, there's further information along the road that has to now be considered that will allow you to draw a broader or a wider conclusion, or a more specific conclusion. That's how it works. You wouldn't sit there with the same philosophical mind from the 1920s saying this is how it works, physics and the interaction of chemicals, and then 100 years later, we're still taking the same one-track mind view. You have to expound on things. You do further research, you do further checks, you start to realize more. There was an article that was sent to me by someone sent me a video article of a white American racist. And this is why I felt this discussion between Dominic Samuels and Sasha Johnson was so important. Someone sent me a video article for a white American racist. And this is how he started. The white American racist on his video chat, I'm not going to give him any credibility or any name check. He started by explaining that black people are so lost that they will create anything to get credibility. They will say anything to get credibility. In his patronizing manner, remember I said about the humoristic approach? In his patronizing manner, he explained that black people are so lost and so lacking in anything, and don't want to accept the facts that white people lifted them out of savagery, that they have to make up that they had civilizations that did something great in the past, like Wakanda. Now, this is one of the things I've always said about Black Panther. I said I like Black Panther, but you know that mysticism of Wakanda and all those stuff, it doesn't effectively work if it's just in mythology. We have to create some facts around those principles whenever we push those things out, because once this is the attack that's coming, where he said we have to lean towards these made up stuff like Wakanda to feel like we're a part of society. He then took that and went into a debate about the Nation of Islam, explaining how stupid and how much rhetoric and racist rhetoric that's in the Nation of Islam's philosophy. And he started to break down, explaining that the Nation of Islam believed that the white men turned into monkeys. And he started to go into some complete hogwash and made up stuff. Then he would show these extracts of where he's coming from. And it's not just the Nation of Islam. He tried to denigrate any black leader that, for one reason or another, said the white man is the devil. The historical context of things were not linked. The facts of when things were said, when so many people were being lynched and segregation was at its rifest, wasn't said. These are the, but what you have is like a person that has a major following. And they're talking to millennials that don't even know what the 90s entailed. They're talking to millennials that don't know what the 80s entailed, the 70s, the 60s. They have no clue, because it's not something that is highlighted. Black history and the process of teaching Black history has to be implemented with contextualization. We have to learn how to convey information and context. They say history is written by the winners. However, am I talking to myself? I just realized I'm talking to myself. And no one ain't calling in. Hit me. I wonder if anyone out there listening. 0753-996-8143. This is meant to be a discussion, but yeah, history is with it. Again, let me give it one more time. 0753-996-8143. 0753-996-8143. They say history is written by the winners, right? The victors of war. But right now, they claim that we're not at war, right? We claim we're just trying to get society in the right place and the right fixtures and the right fixings, right? Let's use that mental approach that they're trying. Then everything has to be contextualized, because what's happened is that if you don't teach your youngsters about the context of things and why things were done at a certain time, that sense of knowledge and know-how is lost. And why? So what you have is that then you get these modern day journalists that go out there and their sole purpose is to undermine everything that's gone before, claiming that they're not racist, claiming that that the Nation of Islam and all these other groups used to say that if you shave a white man, they're a monkey underneath. And the context of that, the black man was being called a monkey for generations, until he stood up and go, well, if you shave a monkey, how does he look? He ain't black underneath. And that was in retaliation to white oppression and abuse, racist white oppression and abuse. It wasn't because they just got up and turned around and said, no, these people are monkeys. It was, I ain't no monkey. Let's shave one and see what it looks like. That was
a retaliation to being called a monkey for so long. These things are swept under the carpet. And that's why it's important and essential to teach things and teach in context, but you have to be able to teach it right across the board. And Sasha explained this to Dominique in a sense to say, listen, because this girl Dominique kind of crazy. She said slavery ended 400 years ago. I mean, I don't know where she learned that, you know what I mean, or whether it was a slip of the tongue. But she said slavery ended 400 years ago, when Sasha was saying, well, no, slavery is still going on to today, which is something that we understand, that mental slavery and the detriments and financial ramifications and impact of slavery is still profound in today's society. But to tell some of these youngsters that, would they hear it?
I don't think that's fair.
Go on. I'm listening.
I wouldn't say all,
Hold on. Fire that. Go on.
I
I'm
wouldn't say
listening.
all youngsters. That's a bit unfair.
Go
I
on.
think we should say black people in general, because as you know, there's the older generation that have that same mindset. The situation that you're speaking about now pertain to a young black woman, but I know there's other situations where older generations might have that same mindset.
All right. I'll come to that. So you're saying that let's get this correct. You're saying that basically
I'm saying keep it to the topic. The example that you've given was in regards to two black women that were young. However, they weren't they are not the example of all young people, or how all young people think. They were just that particular example, because I know there's older generations that have that similar mindset and that similar view.
Now, that's the next part of it. Where does that mindset come from? Where does the mindset come from where you belittle your brothers and sisters? Because in a sense, I mean, like I said, I don't call a black person a coon, because in calling a black person a coon, it's like you become a coon. I know Sasha called Dominique a coon, and I couldn't understand the context of why she called her that. However, like I said, we all have engaged in something that someone, and it's a made-up word, I know, someone can classify as a bit coonistic in its approach and tendencies. We've all done it in some capacity. So we have to look at the age of Dominique and say, well, maybe she's not really per se that. And I would say Sasha was wrong in calling her a coon. Sasha should have said, you know, it's coon-like tendencies, and, you know, push to empower her. And I thought that the ending where Sasha went for the jugular wasn't essentially necessary, even though I would have gone for the jugular too. So I'm saying it's not essentially necessary if you're trying to teach.
No, but she tried, and she said several times we don't need to go there, but Dominique wasn't listening.
No, but no, she apologized. She went for the jugular when Dominique apologized, you know, for being wrong. But I'm just saying, it's like, nonetheless, the term of calling someone a coon. But again, someone might say if someone's a coon, they're a coon. You just have to see a coon for what it is. But like I said, we've all done something that's not quite as it should be. You know, we don't know until we get there. We all make mistakes. You know, so from that angle, you know, it was quite, the conversation went a bit awry, you know, from where it should have been. You know, so anyway, getting back on topic, where does that mindset come from, where you have, how can I say it? Where you have someone that doesn't, they become essentially dangerous. they're enemy to their own without even realizing that they're an enemy to their own. Go on.
I think personally it comes from we're very comfortable. When you're comfortable, you kind of remove yourself from
the suffering,
the oppression, the oppression that has taken place. So when you're, like I said, when you're comfortable, you've removed yourself. And a lot of us, especially I would say the younger generation, because we're comfortable, we've removed ourselves from
the struggle.
And we don't necessarily know the struggle until we get older and we see how the struggle is twisted.
Because in slavery, there were black slave owners. That means in slavery, there were black folks of enough wealth and influence and power to do as they chose to do within the dynamics of things. So it's like, is this young lady fitting into that same tendency because she's had a bit of leeway to create and grow? She feels that she's now exceptional to the rule. You know, and I'm not knocking her. I just feel again, like I said, we've all gone through moments where we've done something that we shouldn't quite have done it in that way, and we may all do it again. You know, so we have to stay on that pathway where when we speak and when we're looking out at things, we are representative to all. There are some black folks out there that are ashamed of slavery, rightfully so. But they're ashamed in the sense that they don't want to be associated with it. They see it as a long time ago and it doesn't impact on them. It's nothing to do with them. Wrongly so. The reason being is because, you know, the impacts and the ramifications from that, like, it's only recently people found out that the slave, if you worked in this country over the last 50 years, anytime over the last 50 years, and paid taxes up to 2015, some of your money went to pay slave owners. Doesn't that make you feel disgusted? No, really, doesn't that make you feel disgusted? If you knew that, how many people would have worked? It's a question out there. If you knew that you working would pay, some of your money would go towards paying slave owners, would you have worked? Would you have come to this country? Do you think your parents, if you're part of the Windrush generational offsprings, or you're still of age and you're a Windrush member, would you have come to this country? I need to understand that. 0753-996-8143. 0753-996-8143. Because in my mind, hell no. The little tax I've paid that I didn't know that I was contributing, I feel like I want it back. It's derogatory and disrespectful. That's like asking the Jewish community to pay all the people, all the soldiers and the army people from Nazi Germany, that for to pay them off, to say, oh, thank you for freeing us now. That's disgusting in every sense and shape of the word. And these are the debates that we're supposed to be having. The government should work out how much black contribution has been towards that and give that money back first and foremost before any reparations. That's modern day disrespect beyond any other. You know? Completely. Reparations, I don't care, it could be 1,000,000 years from now. Reparation has to be done. You know, some people say they don't want any reparation, and who would get it? Now, there's a little delicate matter with me saying that. And here it goes. Sasha said something sorry, let me rephrase that, rewind. Dominique said something which I obviously can't double check, so I can't verify or validate. she spoke of her brother, didn't she?
Yeah.
And she said her brother was
1/4 black.
1/4 black. So it didn't make sense unless, how does that make sense? So one of her parents are mixed.
That's the assumption.
It would have to be, right? She was raised with her mother, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So is there a cutoff from, and it's a question I don't know. And if anyone's offended by it, it's not something to make people offended. I'm just looking for answers. Is there a cutoff if someone has a mixed child and the mother of that mixed child is white, and that mother doesn't teach that mixed child about understanding the greater dynamics of the struggle that a black mother would impart, because we know that with that struggle, things are imparted onto your child, positively in some senses, negatively in others, right? So the mother did their best job, raised a healthy, well-balanced child, but that understanding of that nuanced understanding of the struggle and that nuanced understanding of self from a black perspective on that side of things wasn't conveyed to the child because perhaps the dad wasn't there to give that comprehensive overview. And then that child is raised up, has another child, perhaps even with another black person, for example. But then again, there's that discord where the mother isn't able to transcribe that information to the child. Is that a cutoff? I've said this before, where who should be representative of us? Those that understand the fullness of the nature of things, or those that feel like they have the solutions? Because the solutions that a lot of people come up with is always something that detracts and takes away from us by making us out to be the victims and the ones that are whining too much, as opposed to the victims of our own lack of self-worth, and the ones that are whining too much, where there's truth in some aspects of that, in that once we allow someone to hold us down, then they're winning. So we have to respect and understand our own self-worth. But it doesn't explain that cutoff. It doesn't address that cutoff, I should say. And we need to address things in a comprehensive manner. So when I understood that this young lady has been on Sky News and she's been interviewed on certain things, these views become dangerous and unhealthy. Likewise, can we say that Sasha's views are a bit extremist? Depends on what Sasha is seeing. In a lot of senses, we can say, well, perhaps it might not be the best approach, because in some senses, we should go down the road of dialogue and legislation, like Dominique said. And I agree with, we have to always push for legislation, like I said earlier. However, what if you've exhausted all those avenues? What then? And you constantly are being thrown back with hate and imbalances and injustices in your face. When do you draw that line? The funny thing in this country, the only place that I've seen very, 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 very little racism is funnily enough, is within the roadman culture. The roadman culture is very united. Why? A roadman loves another roadman as long as there's part of the clique and the crew, based on a simple philosophy: survival. Why doesn't that transcribe to greater society? Because in greater society, you get the imbalances, you get the racial prejudices and all these things coming through. But
in the roadman lifestyle, 'cause I study every aspect of society. In the roadman lifestyle, there's a slightly different nuance. I'm not saying there's not racism that permeates there. I'm just saying it's not so profound in its because it becomes like back in the day, for those who are old enough to know that if you have an enemy, a common enemy, then you're friends. So back in the day, Russia was the common enemy as the USSR, right? So the USSR was the common enemy. So if you was on the American side, you know, if you used to watch if you was watching Rocky, you know, the guy in the American shorts or representing America, you wanted him to win. Because the Russian was the enemy, right? Propaganda. That's what that is. Even though they talk about Russians doing propaganda, the West did a whole load of propaganda as well. You know what I mean? If it's in the same way, you know, that is transcribed into every society. You know, if you got an enemy, a common enemy. So now the common enemy of these before COVID-19, which is now the new common enemy, was terrorism, Islamic terrorism. No one like an Islamic terrorist. I know who this is. No one like the Islamic terrorist. You know, so common enemies. So perhaps because in roadman culture, the police are the common enemy. Perhaps that's why you get a more united. Oh. Hello? Yeah, apologies for that, folks. Just had a quick call that I had to take. I don't know why the producer didn't say anything. So the common enemy, I apologize for that. The common enemy is Islamic terrorists. Sorry. The common enemy for people that propagate on the roadman culture is the police. So perhaps that philosophy of the common enemy, you know, does work in some scenarios. You know, so perhaps through it's a psychological approach in that sense why people take on that guise. I don't know, but nonetheless, I'm going to read a few text messages. Text message reads, "We must stay focused and in one accord and stop fighting in the public. We have what have we achieved since we are here?" 971 says, "Good morning, doctor. Please continue listening and learning." All right, so there's quite if you want to take part in the show, 0753-996-8143. You know, there's so much that we need to make sure that we comprehensively cover and deal with within this society. And we have to make sure that our voices are heard in the right way and represented by the right voices and in a balanced perspective that take into consideration us all. All right, so that's the debate between Dominique Samuels and Sasha Johnson. If you don't want to go watch that, formulate your own opinion. You might agree or you might disagree with my summary of it. I just wanted to get the little nuances out there to make sure that we all understand that when you start to pigeonhole yourself, it's very difficult to have a wider agreement. You know, it's best to not pigeonhole yourself, but just take the best bits of whatever you're formulating and present your argument and being supportive and respectful of the other aspects of the argument. You know, if you don't agree with reparations, you don't have to agree with reparations, but a lot of people do feel that there needs to be some validation for the crime that was committed. And you cannot compare
and this is a message if Dominique ever hears it, you cannot compare the slavery that was in process before the transatlantic process to the barbarity of the transatlantic slave trade. There's a complete difference, and that is something that I would encourage for you to research. You know, you cannot, there's certain comparisons that you drew within that debate that suggested a little bit more research and learning and understanding is needed. You know, so bear that in mind. On the other side, you know, we're going to, off the news in an advert in the next 10 minutes, you know, we're going to be discussing Black women as it's Black History Month. You know, what do Black women want? It's a subject matter that we've been discussing for a while now. So it'll be interesting to get some sisters calling in and saying, you know what, everything's good, or you know what, this is that. And I say that because, and if no one calling, I guess we wrap up early because I'm not going to speak for the better part of 3 hours, just rambling by myself. It's going to be, I want to understand, you know, where society is as we move along with Black women, what things need to keep transpiring and keep changing, so that as a man, I'm able to better understand the difficulties that the other half is going through, that so that whatever I do on my day-to-day is set to improve the dynamics and the circumstances of the other half. You know, and that's how we're supposed to be living, as far as I'm concerned. Whatever we do, supposed to always be, you know, the resonance from that should always be improving those around, and, you know, those to come to benefit from, you know, and that's the best practice in my eyes. So it'll be good to hear from some sisters in regards to what Black women want. Next week, we can touch base on in relation to men. I hear a lot of men complaining that, you know, and I'm going to throw it out there, I hear a lot of men complaining that Black women are, you know, a lot of the breakdown in the Black family has been created not because the men have walked away, but because a lot of women are bitter and they prevent the fathers from being a part of the child's life. You know, and this debate and argument is a profound one. So, and there may be much reasoning behind that, you know. So all these things, you know, is this, we want to let the women have a chance to come forward and, you know, what they would love to see within an ideal society, and within the other half ideally being respectful in all ways. And I hope I'm not saying anything that's disrespectful and kind of being counterproductive to the whole point of it, but rather, you know, being inclusive of that. So what's the show been around so far? We've discussed today, let me summarize before the news and advert. We've discussed COVID and the second lockdown. You know, we've had a quick chat about the vaccination process with that. You know, we hope that everyone is in good stead. The rules are changing all around depending on where you are in the country. If you are up there in the north side of town, up there in Liverpool, Manchester, you're already in lockdown. If you're in Leicester, you already have been in lockdown for a few months. Is it heading back to London? It's funny because if London was the worst affected part in the country during the COVID pandemic, it's surprising to know that London would go through the same effect twice. I mean, how many people didn't contract it or potentially had it and didn't know? Asymptomatic cases. If so many people were projected to have had it, then by default, some 60% of London should have immunity by now. So I'm just looking at the statistics overall, because the way that they present these cases are very convoluted. They're saying that there's now 40 million cases of COVID in the world, but there isn't, because most of those 40 million cases get over it and it's gone. So the way they present it is like if it's like 40 million people walking up and down with COVID, but rather than it being the case that 40 million people had it or contracted it at one time or another, and now there's only like 300,000 with it. But they make it sound like there's literally 40 million people out there with COVID. So they always exaggerate and present it in the worst case scenario. And it's a bit confusing as to why they want to take on such an approach where people would be shocked by it when they hear 40 million people having COVID. It's like a lot of people are going to literally take that there's 40 million people out there walking up and down with COVID as literally at the moment, as opposed to no, it's over the last few months since January or December when the statistics started to be gathered from China initially. And when we go globally and we look at all the confirmed cases, and some cases weren't tested, and we know that there might be a lot of false positive tests as well. A total of 40 million people over the past 10 months have at one point contracted and gotten over COVID, and this amount have died. And at the moment, roughly, in recent weeks, there's this amount of active cases, because the statistics will be not so shocking and dire, but the way they present it is right now there's 40 million people in the world with it. So the way the news media transcribes the information is a bit odd, and it does lead to one feeling like they are trying to induce fear and shock and awe in a lot of guises, rather than simply explaining what it is. But that's another thing. So we hope that everyone is maintaining good mental health. We know that the Black population is, in a lot of senses, the guinea pig. We're out there doing most of the contact jobs and the contact stuff. So if anyone's going to be most impacted by that, it's going to be the BAME community, because we're the first responders for everything. The nurses on the front line, the delivery drivers, we have that first contact point. So we're always going to be the guinea pigs in this scenario. And so they want to give the guinea pigs the vaccine to test whether the guinea pigs are protected. And also we discussed the Ice Cube coming out more so in support of Donald Trump, not because he's a Republican, but because the Trump campaign group have made the best offer for the best offer in terms of the election purposes. Sorry, 1 second. Text message 749. Good morning. Are you able to touch on the Great Reset coming in January, just after the circuit breaker? I've heard about it. I don't know if it's going to happen. And so I wouldn't essentially want to speculate, because I don't want the show to become a conspiracy-based show. We rather discuss things that are pertinent within the media in the last week. It's only out of due respect to Black History Month, and the fact that we've discussed it so much due to other issues debated in the media over the past month and social media, the Black woman, because we know that right now, right, as they say, Black Lives Matter, we say Black women matter, right? So right now, we want to make sure that the Black women, have a voice, and we can start to see and better understand as we go along the issues. And I don't think one show or two shows can contend with that, but we've been debating it about women. If the 4C textured here, see, I start learning about 4C, 4A, and all these other kind of ear texture that I never know about. To get me, all these things started to come out now since we've started having these debates. And so it's good to start being proud of yourself and step forward. There's a BBC News presenter that's so proud of her natural hair. She rocks it every time on the BBC, looking lovely. You know what I mean? Lovely and beautiful. But anyway, so Ice Cube's come out and back the Trump campaign because they've given the best offer in terms of should they come into power, what they could offer immediately to the African American community. And last but not least, we also had a good summary of the debate between Dominic Samuels, a representative that's done Sky News and other platforms for as a black voice, versus Sasha Johnson, who's a very strong pro-black female out there doing a lot of work within the community. It's the doctor's surgery. You know, we do each and every Tuesday morning from the hours of 8 until 11. We give you as best a summary within the UK's first Black current affairs show. We give you a good summary of everything that's taken place in the media over the past week, and we do our best to kind of explain and clear up all the nuances that exist within these topic areas. So we're going to take a pause for the cause, pay some bills, catch you back on the other side after the news and the advert, so keep listening.
News and views around your field. Listen for Radio Independent UK News and 10. The Sunday